YouTube, can we meet again? Today we're watching the one-man army who captured 132 Germans. Alvin York by the Fat Electrician. Be sure to subscribe, like, and drop a comment below. This was cringe-corded live at twitch.tv/LunaAwoo VT. Drop a follow, grab a chicken nugget, and let's get started.
When most people think of a war hero, they probably instinctively just jump to John Rambo, the fictional hero from the Vietnam War. Well, John Rambo is actually based off of a real war hero, Roy Benavidez. Roy Benavidez joined the army because he wanted to be like Audie Murphy, the most decorated war hero of World War II. And Audie Murphy joined the military because he wanted to be like this man. Today we're talking about Alvin York, a 215-pound red-headed hillbilly blacksmith from the mountains of Tennessee that was drafted into World War I despite his desire to be a conscientious objector due to his devout Christian beliefs. By the time his paperwork had cleared recognizing him as a conscientious objector, he decided to go into combat anyways because he had become convinced that he was on a mission from God to protect the innocent, and he would go on to become one of America's greatest war heroes in World War I. And we're
clearly he was.
Right after a word from our sponsor.
Oh my God.
I told
Becky?
you it was big.
I mean,
look at her butt.
I know you said you were packing heat, but Jesus.
And you thought it was going to be
Ayo.
smaller than your forearm.
No, it's look at it. It's got a nice shape to it.
Oh,
I mean, it's rigid, it's hard. I don't see how anybody could ever be disappointed with something like this.
why would you walk into that? Why would you not walk away?
Hi, Gavin.
Is that a nuke?
All right, here's the deal. Super simple.
What was that?
You give them money, they turn around and make sure the data brokers on the internet aren't selling.
Honestly,
your
yeah,
personal
normal bro
information. What does that
combo
even
for
mean?
real.
Okay, here's the entire internet and every free service on the planet inside of a nutshell. Okay, there's a saying: if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. What that means is pretty much anything on the internet that you use, that's a service. Whether that be Google, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all of it. Okay, it's all an app. So one of two things is happening. They're either going to feed you ads, and that's how that company makes money since their service is free, or they're going to collect your personal information, then turn around and sell it to data brokers on the internet, and then they're going to turn around and sell it to whoever buys it, and next thing you know, you're getting 17,000 robocalls every single day. And that's where Delete Me comes in. They will look through all the major data brokers and find the ones that are selling your personal information and submit opt-out requests on your behalf, and then they are legally obligated to comply. And then they'll continue to monitor these data brokers, and if they get your information again, Delete Me will submit an opt-out request again. Basically, you're paying Delete Me to get rid of all the downsides of all of the free stuff on the internet, which I think is absolutely worth it. If you want to check them out, I'll have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video.
Where's my 1 month free trial?
All right, the story begins on December 13th, 1887, when Alvin York is born. He is born, he has a mother,
Just
a father,
a wee
two
baby.
older brothers, and would later go on to have 8 younger siblings, and they
Oh
all
my God.
grew up in a 2-bedroom log cabin in Paul,
Two-bedroom?
Tennessee, right next to the Kentucky border. The York family has been in this exact spot for generations. Alvin's great-great-grandfather originally settled here, and when he first lived there, he was living inside of a cave. They then later built this log cabin, and that cave was converted into a blacksmith shop. The same exact blacksmith shop that Alvin works in as an apprentice his entire childhood underneath his dad when they're not busy farming their 75 acres and going hunting for food. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to explain to you that these are straight up mountain folk and have been for hundreds of years, okay? They're devout Christians living out in the rural area by themselves. They just want to be left alone to their own affairs and be self-sufficient.
Just like me for real.
And his family is very, very good at it. Now, Alvin was the
Not
third
self-sufficient,
oldest, the
just
third
leave me alone.
son of 11 siblings, and I don't want to say he was the favorite child, but him and his dad did have a very special relationship because he wanted to be just like his dad. He was attached to his dad at the hip from the time that he could walk. He was getting up every morning, going hunting with his dad. Then he was coming back and he was working in the field with his dad. Then they were coming back, eating dinner, and he was going out and making horseshoes and working in the blacksmith shop with his dad. And he did that for his entire childhood.
I just noticed the
One of the
duck.
things that Alvin excelled at the most was hunting. He was just a natural marksman. He was extremely accurate. By the time he was 10 years old, he was so accurate with his rifle that when he went turkey hunting, rather than shooting the body and ruin a bunch of the meat, he would opt to just blow the turkey's head off completely, saving all of the meat. Bear in mind, this is with a Civil War era black powder musket, not a shotgun, so that's extremely impressive. By the time he was a
Yeah,
teenager,
that's
the nearest
insane.
town, Pall Mall, Tennessee, would have shooting competitions every weekend, and sometimes these shooting competitions would have prizes. There'd be 4 separate events. If you won one of the events, the prize wasn't cash, it was a cow, so you would actually win a quarter of that
Cash cow.
Young teenage Alvin
quarter
York
of
would
the
walk
cow?
miles into town, partake in this shooting competition with his muzzleloader, win all 4 events, and then opt to just take the whole cow and walk it home so he didn't have to carry all the slaughtered meat himself, and he would then slaughter the cow once he got home.
Damn!
Not only was Alvin extremely accurate with
Bro's a
firearm, but by the
mountain
time
man.
he was 19, 20 years old, he was a pretty big dude by that point in time. Like, he was the biggest guy in
I mean,
his
yeah,
family
he ate a whole
and the
cow.
biggest guy in town. He was a 6-foot redhead coming in at 215 pounds that had been doing nothing but
Hacking
running
the
around
heat.
in the woods hunting for food and blacksmithing his entire life. He was built like a brick shithouse. He was so big and so jacked compared to everybody else living up in the Appalachian Mountains that they would just refer to him as Biggin. You know, as in like, hey,
Biggin.
go talk to Alvin about that. Oh, okay, sure. Which one's Alvin? Fucking the Biggin. And this has been his entire life at this point. His childhood, his teenage years, his early 20s, just hunting out in the woods, blacksmithing, farming, getting food to survive, minding his own business, and going to church on Sundays.
He's
That's
a
what he does. That's all
shit.
he ever wants to
Brick
do.
house.
It's just a perfect, peaceful, happy life. As time goes on, his 2 older brothers wind up finding wives. They move out. They start their own families. Now Alvin is the oldest sibling in the house. And then in 1911, his father passes away, and Alvin becomes the man of the house. And Alvin obviously does
Good
not
old
take this
Alvin.
that well. His dad was his best friend. He was attached to the man at his hip his entire life. Not only is he gone and he lost his friend, but he has to immediately step in and fill the giant shoes that he left behind to provide for his mother and his 8 younger siblings. During this time, Alvin quits going to church. He picks up a drinking problem, a smoking problem, a gambling problem. He's doing everything he can to make money and provide for his family, but any free time he has, he's spending at the bar getting belligerently drunk. Over the course of the next couple of years, Alvin gets a reputation for being a troublemaker. He's always getting in fights, both fists, knives.
His shit
Thankfully,
brick
he's
house
able to
physique
avoid
is gonna
gunfights
turn
because
into
anytime somebody wants to pull a
beer
gun, 'cause he's a
belly.
big dude, he pulls out his gun and shoots something as a demonstration of how accurate he is. One account said a man pulled a gun on him. He pulled out his gun and then shot the head off a lizard behind him. At which point, that guy was like, you know what? Never mind. I'm good. Puts the gun back away, which is probably the correct answer. Now, this raises
Yeah,
the
no, I'm good,
question,
bro.
he doesn't always get all these fights, but he never actually gets in trouble. Well, one, this is the early 1900s in rural Tennessee and
Because he's
Appalachia,
clever.
so there isn't much law enforcement. But to make things worse, his preferred bar is known as the Blind Tiger, which is literally on the border between Kentucky and Tennessee. And inside the bar, there's a white line painted across the floor labeling each state. Kentucky and Tennessee. So even when the sheriffs did show up, all anybody in the bar would do
You just have to
is if
cross
the
the
Tennessee
line?
sheriffs showed up, they would walk over to the Kentucky side and be like, you don't have any jurisdiction here.
You don't
and
have any
vice versa.
jurisdiction.
Have our jurisdiction. And so if I'm
Aw,
over
shucks.
there, there's no way that you.
Now, to us, modern day people, obviously this sounds a little bit ridiculous that they would just walk across a painted line on the ground like it was, you know, a salt line that demons can't cross and the law enforcement can't get you. But back then, it's really how it went, because if 1, 2, even 3 deputies
That is a
showed up to
5-head
bar fight,
move.
and there's 40 people in the bar and they all walk to the other side and they're like, you have no jurisdiction here, and the other 40 dudes all have guns, guess what? You don't really have any jurisdiction here. The only jurisdiction you have is to lose a 40-on-3 gunfight. Okay, this is 1912, rural Tennessee. There's no calling for backup for the sheriff's department. There's no local police department. There's no highway patrol. There's no National Guard, no FBI, no feds. Nobody's coming to back you up. If you get into
Nope,
some
you're
shit
just
with the
target
wrong people,
practice.
you're just gonna be another motherfucker that went missing in the mountains of Appalachia. The end. So Alvin York is just kind of an unstoppable terror on the town when he's drunk. He gets mean. He's huge. You can't beat him in a fist fight. You can't beat him in a gunfight. There's
He's
not
a
really anything you can
shit.
do to the guy.
Brick
He winds up getting
house.
accused of selling stolen guns, never gets in trouble for it. He'd walk out of the bar at sunrise, absolutely hammered. A rooster would crow. He'd pull out his gun and shoot somebody's rooster just because he was hungover and didn't want to hear it. He'd
Oh
be
my
drunk
God.
in the middle of town yelling while churches in
That
session,
poor
trying to
rooster.
disrupt everything. Just, there was nothing anybody could do about the guy, and this went on for years. And the entire time, he's just breaking his mom's heart, because this is not the sweet young kid that she raised. This isn't the man his father was. This isn't the man he was supposed to be. He was supposed to be his dad version 2.0, bigger and stronger and hopefully even better. And he's just not turning out that
He's
way.
letting
Then
down
on
mama.
New Year's Eve, 1914,
Letting down
Alvin
mama's
goes
shit
out
brick
drinking,
house.
comes back home, 3 in the morning, pissed drunk, and his mom stays up all night waiting for him, and she finally confronts him and just says, Alvin, When are you going to start being
I'm
the man that
disappointed,
your father
son.
and your grandfathers were? And the words hit Alvin like an absolute truck. He knows what he's been doing is wrong, and he just breaks down. He's literally on his knees, sobbing with his head in his mom's lap, crying and apologizing. He promises his mom he's going to turn it around. He's going to start going to church again. He's going to give up gambling, smoking, drinking, fighting, everything. He's going to be the man his father was and the man that he was supposed to be. And his mom just says, I know you will.
Mama always believes.
And that's it. January 1st, 1915, Alvin York is a completely new man. He gives up all of it. He starts going to church again, and he just starts doing all the things that he should have been doing all along. I'm paraphrasing here, but he would later go on to write that essentially he had fought an awful lot of men at this point in his life, and the fight that he had with himself to give up drinking and smoking was absolutely the hardest fight he ever had. But he does it, and within a couple of years, he's an elder in his church. He's literally teaching Sunday school to kids, and he's
hard to
overall
drop
just
those
an
kinds of
upstanding
things.
member in his community. His reputation isn't fully repaired yet, but it's definitely getting better. Around this point in time, he falls in love with the girl down the road, Gracie. He meets up with her in private all the time. They never do anything wrong. They never kiss. They don't even hold hands. But they just talk, and Alvin
No
York wants
kissing.
to marry this woman.
No
Problem
hand
is
holding,
her
not till
father does
marriage.
approve because he's only been an upstanding member of the community for a couple of years now, and he was an absolute terror for like 5 years before that, and he's not convinced that Alvin York is a good man yet. And York just kind of accepts that. He knows that he did wrong and he's got to prove that he's a good man now, so he just gives the father more time and just keeps being an upstanding member in the community. He keeps seeing Gracie, but they never kiss, they never hold hands, they never do anything that would be considered wrong for, you know, Christians in the early 1900s. And that's his plan. He's going to prove to Gracie's father
Or
that he's a
so
good
they
man
say.
and then he's going to marry that girl, make her his wife, and he's going to go on to live happily ever after. But then in September of 1917, he gets a red card in the mail from Washington, D.C. Alvin York has just been notified that he is to go sign up for the draft to go fight in World War I. Now, he's a devout Christian at this point. He truly, truly believes in his heart, thou shalt not kill. He does not think that he is supposed to fight, kill, do any of that business, and he does not want to go off to war and do it. So on the draft card they sent him where he's supposed to fill out all of his information, they ask on there, are you a conscientious objector? He checks yes, explain your reasoning. He simply writes, I don't want to fight, and mails it back off.
I'm not fucking leaving.
Obviously, that gets rejected. Alvin York, kind of not knowing what to do, goes to the pastor for help. The pastor helps him file an appeal to send it off to Nashville, and with that appeal, he has two sworn statements, one from Alvin, one from the pastor, saying, hey, this is his religion. He is not supposed to be killing people. He should be recognized as a conscientious objector. They mail that off to Nashville, and it still gets rejected again. And the reasoning behind that was because Alvin York's sect of Christianity was Pentecostal, which is a fairly new sect of Christianity at this point in time. I believe it started in the early 1900s as kind of a veer off from Methodist. So the draft committee in Nashville is essentially like, look, this is a new church. It's not nationwide. It's not well recognized. All the other mainstream Christian denominations, Catholic, Orthodox, Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, they're all getting drafted and going off to war. You guys can too. At this point in time, unless you were like actually a pastor or priest in one of these Christian denominations, conscientious objector status was more reserved for like Quakers, Amish, and Mennonites. So that's it. Alvin York's getting drafted. By November, he's got orders to report for duty, and by February, he is attached to G Company of the 328th Battalion of the 82nd Infantry Division, also known as the All-American Division. Now, typically at this point in time, in World War I and World War II, divisions are kind of divvied up by the region that they come from, right? Like the 34th Infantry Division is a bunch of guys from the Midwest. The 77th Infantry Division is a bunch of guys from New York and New Jersey. The 442nd Infantry Regiment is a bunch of Japanese Americans from the West Coast and Hawaii. But the 82nd Infantry Division in World War I is kind of an experiment because they just threw everybody into the same infantry division. They've got people from all 50 states, and 20% of the men weren't even born in America. So you can imagine the culture shock for Alvin, some hillbilly that's lived in rural Tennessee his entire life, probably never traveled more than 60 miles away from his home, and now he's in this place surrounded by people from all 50 states, Poles, Italians, Greeks. It's absolutely crazy. Alvin later said he'd never seen a group of men that could outdrink, outcurse, and outfight these guys, and that's why they are the All-American Division, because they are the embodiment of the concept of the American melting pot. And that's why their logo today says AA on it, for athletic alcoholics. I mean,
alcoholic.
He's absolutely right.
So he goes into training. York starts doing everything he's told to do to the best of his ability, but in the background, he's still kind of trying to go through the paperwork, go through the chain of command, and get himself recognized as a conscientious objector, because at the end of the day, he still does not want to go off and have to take somebody's life, because he truly believes thou shalt not kill.
You know, quite a bit of killing does occur in a war.
Why is he kind of
Despite that,
hot?
if
Because
push
he
comes to shove,
is.
it's
Look at
looking
him.
like he might be the best
He's a
man
fine
doing it,
snake.
because he grew up his entire life no-scope headshotting turkeys with a Civil War era muzzleloader, and the Army has just given him a model 1917 Enfield high-powered rifle chambered in 30-06, and this thing is an absolute killing machine in the hands of Alvin York. He is sitting there in training, hitting bullseye after bullseye. He is the best shot in the entire division. You got to remember, pretty broad group
He's
of
a
people.
born
There's a lot of
natural.
people in this division that grew up in a city that have never even seen a rifle, and Alvin's been handling one since he could walk. Also, around this point, York starts keeping
He's
a
like, yeah,
diary, mostly just
I've
his
eaten a
personal
whole
thoughts
cow.
on how he's dealing with the potential, you know, internal struggle of having to go off to war and take somebody's life when he doesn't feel like that's the right thing to do. And eventually, you know, word gets around that York is keeping a diary, which is against the rules, because you're not supposed to keep a diary, because you could write down important intel, and if you get captured off in war and they capture your diary, you could end up betraying information to the enemy. So his commanding officer, Captain
makes
Danforth, kind of
sense.
confronts him about it and is like, hey, are you keeping a journal? At which point York, being a devout Christian man not wanting to lie, kind of dodges the question. He says, sir, I'm not saying whether I do or whether I don't. At which point the captain says a diary is going to betray you and your comrades. At which point York replies, sir, I didn't come to fight in a war and get captured. If the Germans want to get any intel out of me, they're going to have to get it out of my dead body. And that's coming from the 6-foot, 215-pound redhead brick shithouse hillbilly that only knows how to hit bullseyes. So the captain's like, fuck it, all right. And York just keeps maintaining this diary. But because York was honest with Captain Danforth, he kind of comes to him and is like, hey, I want to talk to you about this. I think I should be a conscientious objector. I do not want to go after combat and have to kill somebody. I truly believe thou shalt not kill. Captain Danforth doesn't have that, you know, authority to grant him that, so he kicks it up the chain of command, and he ends up talking to his boss, Colonel Buxton. Colonel Buxton, a devout Christian man, but unlike York, he also believes that Christians have an obligation to go off and fight for their country when it's needed. So he calls York into his office. York shows up. York explains everything, you know, a devout Christian, elder in my church, thou shalt not kill. At which point Colonel Buxton is like, so do you believe everything that's in the Bible? To which York is like, absolutely, yes, sir. At which point Buxton hits him with a verse from the Bible. Luke 22, he who hath no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. York immediately fires back with another piece of scripture that supports his position. Then Colonel Buxton fires back with another piece of scripture that supports his. And they go
It's a
back and
Bible
forth having
battle.
this scripture rap battle for over an hour. It's like two wizards having a battle with Bible verses for over an hour. It's absolutely crazy. And then Colonel Buxton ends up winning when he hits York with Ezekiel 33. If the watchman sees the sword coming and blows no trumpet, the blood of the people is on his hands. And this shatters York's entire worldview. York has this epiphany. Maybe he's been sent there by God because he's the watchman. Maybe he's supposed to be there to protect
He is the
innocent.
watchman.
So now he doesn't know what to do. But unbeknownst to him, while this has been going on, his pastor and Gracie and his mom back home,
He
have
is
been
the brick
writing
shit
every
watchman.
politician trying to get him recognized
The
as
shit
a
brick house
conscientious objector.
watchman.
They even wrote the office of the president, and they got it pushed through. York receives the paperwork. All he has to do is sign his name on the dotted line, and he will be recognized as a conscientious objector. But now he doesn't know if that's what he's supposed to do. Maybe he's supposed
no
to go
longer
off and fight in this war.
an objector.
So Captain Danforth gives him 10 days to go back home and figure it
He's
out.
a conscientious
He goes home and sees
considerer.
Gracie, she supports whatever he's gonna do, and then he just goes out in the woods on his favorite rock with his Bible, and he sits there for 36 hours reading the Bible and praying. Doesn't
36
eat,
hours?
Doesn't drink, fasts the entire
It's like a day and a half.
We don't really know what happened up there, but we do know when he comes back down, he decides that he's gonna go off to war. Okay, pause, just so we're all on the same page. Whether you're religious and believe in this type of stuff, or you're an atheist, or you're religious but you believe York might be a little bit crazy, none of that matters. The only thing that matters with this now is that the 6-foot-tall, redhead, brick shithouse expert marksman now believes that he is on a mission from God to defend the innocent, and that should terrify absolutely everybody. Okay, and if you don't understand the significance of this, I've been in combat sports my entire life. Taekwondo, karate, boxing, kickboxing. I'm a jiu-jitsu jiu-jitsu coach. I've got certifications in MACP from my time in the Army. If you name a combat sport, I've probably done it to some extent, and I've done it against a broad demographic of people. And I'm telling you right now, the toughest people on the planet are these rural farm kids that grew up in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. You borderline have to kill them just to get them to slow down, and that's when they're doing it for fun, okay? I've never had to compete.
Bro, how
against
to
one of
hit
these
that
dudes when they
5.0
thought they were on
KDA.
a mission from God to defeat me, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't want to. It sounds like an absolutely horrible time.
Chapter
So York
3.
finishes up his 10 days of leave, heads back over to G Company, reports to Captain Danforth. Captain Danforth asks him if he wants to fight Germans. York replies, if a man can make peace through fighting, he's a peacemaker. And with that, they ship off to war. May 1st, they board the ship to head across the Atlantic Ocean, and York has never seen the ocean
He's a
before.
man
It's the
on a
most beautiful,
mission.
incredible thing he's ever seen in his entire life. He's just completely awestruck at its beauty. And then 5 minutes later, he's violently puking and he gets seasick the entire voyage. So the 82nd makes it into theater in June 1918, and they spend the first couple of months are there, kind of getting rotated in reserve positions. You know, they're occupying trenches that aren't seeing a lot of combat, or they're going out on patrols. They do see some combat. They get hit with artillery. There's sniper fire, but it's not the front line. Like, it's not where all the action is happening. Despite that, during this time, York really lays down a pretty impressive demonstration of his faith, because this dude, again, believes that he's on a mission from God, and in his mind, God's not
He's a
gonna let
man
him
on a
get hurt,
mission.
and even if he does, it's part of God's plan, so it's okay. He does not give a fuck about anything. Like, they have enemy artillery fire coming in, everybody else is hitting the dirt, hiding in foxholes, and York is just standing there like,
At least you're not
"Very
licking
fine,
the dirt."
God's gonna protect me," which sounds stupid, but it's not stupid if it works, and it works the entire time. The dude never gets so much as a scratch. In his journal, he literally writes that enemy sniper fire when it's close sounds like angry bumblebees when I used to rob their nest back at home. Like, everybody else is having the worst time of their life, and him almost getting his head taken off by an enemy sniper
Gives him
is
fond
bringing back
memories.
fond childhood memories.
I'm in danger.
Okay, he also
I'm
wrote
in
in his journal,
danger.
quote, "There's no use in worrying about shells if you can't alter things. Just ask God to help you and accept it. Men who worry destroy their peace of mind without doing any good." Okay, he's like the
It's so
Terminator
true,
version of the
though.
slightly awkward homeschooled kid that you met at your first job in high school. Okay, don't give me that look. You know exactly what I'm talking about. From here, they start seeing more heavy combat. They have to go in and push the Germans out of this stronghold called St. Mihail. They go in, they push the Germans out. The Germans end up retreating. They take over the town. Hooray. After they take over the town, right outside the town, there's all these
Hooray!
vineyards full of fresh grapes. Grapes are essentially candy, and these guys have been eating army rations for months. That sounds delicious. So all the soldiers are going out into these vineyards. They're eating grapes. The Germans send up weather balloons. They end up spotting a bunch of soldiers in these vineyards, and they start dropping artillery on them. All the soldiers retreat. The chain of command's like, okay, no more going out in the vineyards to eat grapes because they're going to blow your ass up. But Sergeant York knows he's
But
not going to get blown up
grapes.
because God's going to protect him. So he sneaks off on his own against orders to go eat some grapes. Sergeant York is out there. It's peaceful. He's eating grapes. He's having a
My
moment to himself in the
motherfucking
silence,
grapes.
and then he turns around, and it's Captain Danforth. And they kind of look at each other like, oh shit, we're both caught. And Captain Danforth is like, you're not supposed to be here. And York is like, yes, sir. And Captain Danforth is like,
I'm
these
not
grapes are
supposed to be.
delicious. And York is like, yes, sir. From here, York and the 82nd are going from St. Mihail to another town called Chantal-Cherie. It has been held by the Germans for over 4 years, the entire duration of World War I. The Germans have been here. Whether York
Jeez.
and the rest of the 82nd realize it at this point in time or not, they are about to participate in the Meuse-Argonne offensive. It is quite literally the largest military offensive in U.S. military history. Not largest at this point in time, no, just the largest ever, period. Okay, to put this into perspective, when people think of like huge military offensives,
Ever?
everybody automatically thinks of, you know, D-Day, Saving Private Ryan, other TV shows and movies about World
Yeah.
War II. It's this massive battle scene, right? D-Day had 156,000 men hitting the beach. The Meuse-Argonne offensive is 2 million men attacking the German front. It is a military operation that is quite literally so large, it is hard to conceptualize, okay? There's 50 states in the United States. 11 of them have less than 2 million people, okay? There's 11 states in the United States that have less people living in them in totality between old people, young people, kids.
That's a lot of
than the amount
people.
of soldiers that are about to rush the German line. So this is only one very, very small chunk of an enormous battle, but York and the 82nd show up to Chantal-Cherie. Germans don't even put up a fight for it. They literally just leave the town and head off into the wood line outside the town. Now, right outside the town, there's a big hill called Hill 223. Then there's a big valley, and then on the other side of that valley, there's 3 more
That's
hills
Hill
in a
223
triangular
specifically?
formation. So the 82nd goes in, they push push the Germans off Hill 223. They take that hill. Now they're looking forward. It's the valley, 3 triangular hills directly in front of them, and they're gonna have to cross that valley while the Germans are on top of those other 3 hills. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you the 82nd is now gonna have to run through a valley, AKA no cover, no concealment, while the Germans have the high ground in a triangular formation on top of hills with embedded machine gun positions. This is
And they still beat them.
Situation. Okay, when I say
Holy
the Germans
shit.
dug in, I don't mean they dug a little hole and slapped their machine gun over the side
That's
of it. No,
insane.
they've been there for 4 years, okay? They have chopped down trees, built up actual lumber walls to hide behind with roofs and camouflage the entire things. They can't even
Roofs.
see where the German machine gun fire is going to be coming from, let alone effectively return fire. If they're going to have any chance of success at this, they're going to have to coordinate with artillery. They're going to have to drop artillery at the exact moment that they send a wave of men across the valley, and hopefully they're going to be able to overtake these hills and take out the Germans. So that's the plan. Orders come down at 6:10 a.m. on October 8th, 1918. American artillery is going to bombard the German position, hopefully get them to duck their heads and take cover for a minute, while America sends out 2 waves, 60 men that try to run across this valley and overthrow their position. So they wait, and while they're waiting, the orders actually end up changing because the unit that's supposed to be on the 82nd's flank is hung up taking German fire, and they're not in the position they need to be in to be able to support the 82nd. Unfortunately, the runner with these new orders that was sent to Hill 223 winds up getting killed, and the message never makes it to the 82nd. So as far as they know, they're still supposed to attack this objective at 6:10.
Well, then what are they gonna
6 o'clock
do?
rolls around. No American artillery bombarding the position yet. 6:05. Still no artillery bombarding the position. At this point, people are looking around like, are we still gonna fucking launch this attack without American artillery support? What are we doing? The officer in charge is like, we were ordered to attack at 6:10. We're attacking at 6:10. Sure enough, 6:10 rolls around. The American artillery never shows up. He sends out 2 waves, 60 men. None of them make it. As this battle unfolds and the German machine guns open fire, the chain of command can see there's like 35 machine gun nests all over these 3 hills. There's absolutely
Oh my
no way
God,
they're gonna make it past
35?
35 German machine guns. From here, the chain of command decides the best course of action is going to be to send out a small patrol of men. They're hopefully going to be able to skirt out around the backside of these German machine gun positions and make it to the center hill where most of their firepower is and take out all those machine gun nests. Then they should be able to assault through the valley and up onto these hills. Okay, just so we're on the same page, this is also not a great plan, okay? Like, yes, they're not assaulting the positions directly, but, you know, if the Germans are straight in front of you, they're going to run off this way, still through
That's a
part of
cry
this
for
valley.
help.
Not as big of a part, not as much time to fire
True.
on, but it's still a valley with no cover, no concealment, in broad fucking daylight. Like, best case scenario, they all run really fast, the Germans don't hit them, but now the Germans know that they're coming. So it's not a good plan, but it's the only one we've got. So they pick 17 men. They've got a sergeant, 3 corporals, and a bunch of privates. One of those corporals is Corporal Alvin York. So they go down to the base of Hill 223, probably get a quick stretch in, hype themselves up, about to run through German machine gun fire. No big deal. They're getting ready and they're counting it down and they're all going to hop up and start running for their lives. It's like 3, 2, 1, and right as they say 1, the German machine gun positions just start getting bombarded with American artillery. It showed up late,
shit.
and it showed up at the perfect time.
Oh my
as all
God,
these
right
guys
on-
start running
right at
across
the
this
perfect
narrow stretch
time.
of the valley. All the Germans are forced to take cover, and none of the Germans see these guys clear the valley. Okay, I don't know if it's divine intervention, plot armor, fate, call it whatever you want, but in this particular
Fate.
case, it worked out perfect.
Stop it on the enemy! We love you, God!
They make it through the valley completely undetected into the wood line, and now they spend the next hour and a half sneaking through the woods up and around behind the German position. After like an hour of sneaking through the woods in pretty much a straight line, the sergeant pulls off to the side and he's like, okay, do we think we've gone far enough that we need to start turning because we're going to be behind the German machine gun positions now, or do we need to go a little bit further? He wants to consult his corporals, see what everybody thinks. First 2 corporals say they've gone far enough, they should turn now. Gets to Alvin York, and Alvin York, for some reason, feels like they haven't gone far enough yet. And he's like, I think we should keep going straight for a little bit further. Okay, again, I have no idea why Alvin York thought that. I don't know
Gut
if he,
instinct?
has a feeling from
Insider
God. I don't know if
knowledge?
he can hear the narrator speaking because he's wearing the plot armor.
Maybe
but
he stole one
decides
of the
to keep
enemy's
going straight.
diaries?
The sergeant agrees. They go straight for a little bit longer, and they come up on this like 3-foot deep trench. Now, it's not a military trench, it's just like a 3-foot deep hole. They have no idea why it's there or what it's doing. It's
Just
clearly
random.
not a military trench, but it is going to be pretty handy for them to crouch down and walk in and remain concealed and go unnoticed. In hindsight, historians would figure out later that it was actually a trench that had been there for hundreds of years that was actually used originally as a marker between 2 separate pieces of property, which means the Germans didn't put it there, and they probably don't even know it exists. So they use this trench trench to get further and further. It slips them right past that first hill and straight towards the hill that's in the center, which is their
Oh
objective.
shit.
So
Hill
as they're making their way there, they come
223.
up on this little creek, and on this creek, there's 2 German soldiers just filling up an entire cart full of canteens to bring back to all the other Germans. Those Germans see the Americans, they shit their pants and take off running. York and his guys take off chasing them because they want to capture them or kill them so that they don't alert the rest of the Germans that they're there. As they're chasing these guys down, they come up onto this meadow, and in this meadow, holy shit, it's the battalion headquarters tent for the entire German unit there. And right beside the tent, there's
Oh,
like
God.
70 German infantry soldiers that are just sitting in this meadow, chilling, eating lunch. These were the
Just being
reinforcements
chilly.
that the Germans had brought in to launch a counterattack against the 82nd Division. Now, the 2 Germans that they're chasing do not immediately cut out into the meadow because they don't want to run out into the open because then the Americans are going to shoot them. So they want to skirt this tree line and get as close to that tent as they can and then run into the tent and tell the German commander that the Americans are here. Okay, that's a good plan on their part as far as, you know, not getting shot and dying goes. But fortunately for the Americans, this gives them time to be like, fuck that, let them keep running through the wood line. They immediately advance into the meadow and attack these 70 soldiers that aren't carrying their guns. They're just sitting down, chilling, eating lunch, and immediately force all 70 of them to surrender. Now, the 70 Germans are caught completely off guard.
Surrender.
All they see is Americans running towards them with their guns up, yelling surrender. These guys have their guns, you know, all set to the side. Half of them are sleeping, half of them are eating. They think it's a huge American counterattack, so they surrender immediately.
Half of them
not
are
knowing
jorking
that
it.
there's 17 guys. While the Germans are standing up, putting their hands in the air, the other 2 canteen Germans cut out of the wood line, run into the battalion command tent, and tell the German commander, Commander Vollmer, the Americans are attacking. He freaks out, grabs his pistol, turns around, goes to tell the 70 infantry troops that just showed up, get ready for a fight, and what he sees is they're already standing with their arms up in the air. They've already surrendered, and he's like, what the fuck?
Surrounded by idiots.
He then turns around again, probably trying to quickly send a runner or send a
Good night,
radio transmission to
Galvatron.
his other guys up on the hill, letting them know the Americans are here. And right in front of him is 6-foot-tall, red-haired, red-mustached, ginger
Yes.
Alvin York standing
Shit,
there with his gun.
brick.
He's like,
House.
surrender. So Commander Vollmer,
Shit,
who actually went to
brick,
college
house.
in Chicago
Shit,
and in
brick,
Alvin York's
house.
own words, speaks better English than he does, understands exactly what Alvin York said, and agrees to surrender. York and Vollmer then leave the tent and they go out, and York's going to talk to the rest of his guys, and the Germans on top of Hill 2 with their machine guns have figured out something is going on, and they scream down at the Germans in German, presumably saying, get down. All the Germans drop and the German machine guns open fire. Before York's guys even know what's going on, they are already getting lit up by these German machine guns. In a matter of seconds,
no.
6 Americans are killed, 3 are injured, leaving 8 men left in play with 70 prisoners and German machine gunners up on the hill opening fire on them. Of the 9 American casualties, they include the sergeant and the other 2 corporals, meaning that the only corporal, the
No.
only NCO,
The chain of
only
command.
leadership position left in play is Alvin York and a bunch of privates. Alvin York is now in charge. The rest of the Americans all drop to the ground.
The
try
shit
to
brick
return
man
fire,
himself.
But they're mostly just taking cover. Alvin York rushes the hill by himself.
So, I'm going to kill each and every one of you, and the only disappointment in it for me is that I only get to do it once.
The privates then get themselves oriented to the situation, and the 7 remaining dudes are both returning fire, trying to provide covering fire for Alvin York, while also trying to make sure that the 70 unarmed Germans behind them don't jump them and overpower them. York continues to advance under enemy fire, reaches a little swell on the ground, and drops down into a prone position, not because he's trying to avoid bullet fire. God does that for him. He just drops down to prone so he can be more accurate. So now
God
he's
looking
on
out
the
for
sides
him,
of
bro.
his rifle. He's just waiting for the German
God
helmet to
hooking him
pop
up with
up.
the,
He's sitting there, he's yelling, surrender,
the
give up.
holy
He's literally trying
chainmail.
to be a nice guy about this. German helmet pops up, domes the guy immediately. And in the back of his head, all he can think is, man, these German heads are way bigger than the heads of turkeys back home when I was hunting. He's still continuing to shout surrender as German helmets keep
And that
popping up,
lizard
trying to man the machine gun, and every
that
time
he
a German helmet
popped
pops
at
up,
the
he
bar.
fucking drops them.
You are amazing at this. How did you get so good?
Whacking moles.
And this goes on for a minute. Alvin York just being the polite homeschool kid Terminator. Literally like, guys, seriously, please surrender. Bang. Okay, that's enough now. You guys can quit. Bang. Okay, guys, please surrender. Bang. During this phase
Holy
of the battle,
shit,
Alvin York is
bro.
credited with somewhere between 18
God really
and
is his
23
boy.
kills.
He's his
Now, to
homeboy,
understand
yo.
and comprehend what's going to happen next, you have to understand the perspective of the Germans that are up on top of the hill. They have the high ground, they have machine guns, they have fortified fighting positions, and they are in a firefight with one man, some 6-foot-tall ginger hillbilly from Tennessee, and somehow they're losing. And every time one of them builds up the courage to pop up over the berm, man the machine gun to return fire, this giant
It's
ginger
no surprise
sends their
they're
brain
losing.
on a
He ate
field
an
trip.
entire
And just so we're on
cow.
the same page, York is shooting an infield chambered in 30-06. That is a high-powered rifle cartridge that is commonly used for hunting elk and moose. This rifle in this round is significantly more powerful and way more
Damn.
scary than the scary AR-15s shooting 5.56 that the Army uses today. To put it into perspective, here's a watermelon getting shot by 5.56 and 30-06 at 16,000 frames per second. Okay, if you're not picking
Holy
up what I'm putting down, I'm trying
shit.
to tell you that if you're a German on
Their
top of that
heads
hill, and
just
you've just seen 20 of your buddies get their
explode like
eyebrows
that
sent into
watermelon.
fucking orbit, that's starting to look like not that great of an idea, and you're probably looking for alternatives. Bearing that in mind, the Germans decide they're going to do something that tactically doesn't make a lot of sense. They're going to leave their fortified fighting positions, they're going to abandon the high ground, they're going to grab their rifles, fix bayonets, and they're going to charge this giant red-headed hillbilly and show them what's up. So 12 Germans hop out of their fortified fighting positions with rifles and fixed
They
bayonets
abandoned the
and
high
bayonet
ground just
charge
for
Alvin
him?
York, which in hindsight was a complete mistake for them, and it worked out for Alvin York because Alvin was actually out of rifle rounds altogether and he wasn't going to be able to do anything else, but now he's got 12 Germans running at him, so he pops up, grabs his Colt 1911 chambered in 45 ACP. Bear in mind, he's only got 8 rounds and 12 Germans running at him. Alvin York immediately shoots one, drops him. At that point, 4 of the other Germans decide, okay, this is clearly the main character. I'm an anonymous henchman.
main character.
I'm just going to call it a day. They hop back in the trench.
And look, you haven't even got a name tag. You've got no chance. Why don't you just fall down? Go on, son.
I love this scene.
So now there's 7 Germans still bayonet charging him, and he has 7 bullets. He has to be absolutely perfect. Now, from the lead German's perspective, the guy that's out in front, obviously, he's the one that's going to get shot first. I mean, right? That's what makes sense. You shoot the closest threat first. That way, nobody comes to get you, right? So, as long as he doesn't get shot, everything's going great. He sees Alvin York fire. The bullet whizzes past him. Alvin York missed. Fires again. Another bullet whizzes past him. Again. All of the bullets, all 6 of them, go whizzing right past him. He's got 1 bullet left. He gets shot directly in the stomach and drops. But what actually happened, Alvin York didn't miss. He didn't miss a single time. Alvin York knew that if he shot the dude in the front, everybody behind him was going to see it, and they were all going to take cover, and he wasn't going to have any ammo. So he decided to take out the Germans the same way that you shoot a flock of geese that are flying, and he took out the geese at the rear of the formation first, working his way to the front so the formation didn't scatter. He was shooting the man in the back instead of the man in the front and dropped all 7 Germans. Now, cutting back to Alvin York's perspective during this bayonet charge where he's using
Bros,
bird hunting
Giga.
tactics to kill Nazis,
Mega
he has
mind.
bullets whizzing past him from behind him. Somebody is shooting at him while he's shooting these Germans. It's that German commander Vollmer, because remember, nobody bothered to take his pistol away from
That's a
inside the
real-
camp
that's a
because
real
he was
reenactment right
so
there.
fast, and he's trying to save his own guys, which is pretty understandable. So while York is shooting at Germans with his pistol, Vollmer is shooting at York with his pistol, and York doesn't give one single fuck, because remember, he's on a mission from God, and God is going to protect him, and if he doesn't get protected, it's all part of God's plan, so it's going to be fine. So York just focuses on what he's doing and lets everything else work itself out, and of course, doesn't get a single scratch on him the entire time. Vollmer
Oh my
empties the
God, not a
pistol,
single
misses every
scratch.
single shot. York lands every one of his. At this point, York turns around, Vollmer drops the pistol, puts his hands up, he knows when he's been bested, and he looks at York and he just goes, English? Like clearly asking, like, you know, hey, I speak English, let's talk this out. York does not interpret it that way and goes, no, to which Vollmer's like, what? And York goes, I'm an American. And he's like, just, no, I'm saying I speak English. Quit killing everybody. I'll get the guys up there to surrender so you don't have to kill everybody. At which point, York reloads his pistol, points it at Vollmer, is like, okay, go ahead. Vollmer starts yelling a bunch of stuff up the hill in German. Couple seconds later, a bunch of more Germans come out, no weapons, with their hands up, and they surrender too. Germans finish coming down the hill, they join the rest of the POWs, at which point, one of the 7 remaining privates comes up to York and is like, York, what are we going to do with all these prisoners? We don't have enough men to handle this many guys and get them back behind our lines. Vollmer hears this and he's like, what? I'm sorry, how many men do you guys actually have? And York is like, I've got plenty, don't worry about it. At this point, York, with Vollmer still at gunpoint, is going to use Vollmer to translate and get everything moving. He's like, all right, get your guys up, tell them to get in a column of 2. We're going to march out of here, tell them to pick up your wounded, tell them to pick up my wounded and my dead. They're going to carry them back to our lines. Problem, how on earth are we going to get back? Because we definitely can't go the way we came through the woods. We're not going to be able to keep track of like 100 plus.
This guy
German
thinks of
prisoners
everything.
through that dense forest. We're going to have to go out in the open, and the rest of the Germans are going to see us, and that's not going to work out. At which point, Volmer chimes in, and he's like, well, you can take this gully right here, and that'll take you right to Hill 223. He's obviously trying to set him up for an ambush because he knows where all of his soldiers are, and York is like, well, we're not fucking going there. You know what? I'm the main character. We're just going to march right down the main road that goes straight to Chantal Cherie, straight to Hill 223. So that's what they do. They just take off ruck marching right down the middle of this main road in the middle of enemy-held territory because York is the main character, and it's all part of God's plan, I guess. So they're making their way there, and sure enough, they run into an entire platoon of Germans that are guarding the road because obviously. However, from the Germans' perspective, there's like 7 Americans and 100 plus Germans. There's absolutely no way that those Americans have those Germans as POWs, so they don't open fire. They end up walking up and approaching to see what's going on, figuring the Americans are the POWs. Once they get close enough to realize the Americans
prisoners
are the
of
ones with the
war.
guns, York shoves his pistol into Volmer's back and is like, make them surrender, tell them they're surrounded. Volmer does what he's told, tells them to drop their guns, they're surrounded. They do it because Volmer's a battalion commander, they drop their guns, and they get taken as POWs too. From there, they just keep marching to Hill 223, and as they start getting closer, the Americans see a massive formation of German uniforms.
Volmer's like, you haven't seen what I've seen. You haven't seen the shit Rick made house do this.
Closer and closer, they're looking through field glasses, and they see York's big ginger ass with a gun pointed at the German, and is like, holy shit, York captured everybody. So they get to the base of Hill 223. The 82nd commander meets him down there and is like, York, holy shit, how
Dude's
many
a
men did you
fucking
capture? To which
Chad.
York replies, honestly, I have no idea, sir. And the commander's like, all right, well, you're promoted to sergeant, by the way. Great work. March these guys into Chantal Cherie, and I'll count them off as they march by, I guess. Commander then proceeds to count them off as they march by. York had captured 132 Germans. So York marches his POWs off to Chantal Cherie, and the rest of the
And he only had like, what, 7 American soldiers or something left?
less machine gun positions, and the ones that do remain don't have a chain of command to be giving them orders. So they overtake the objective, they secure the area fairly easily. York makes it to Chantal Cherie, where battalion headquarters are. Battalion headquarters is like, we don't have the logistics for this many prisoners. March them up to regimental headquarters. Marches them up to regimental headquarters. They can't take that many prisoners either. March them to division headquarters. Marches them all the way to division headquarters. When he gets there, General Lindsay,
This is
like the main guy
hilarious.
in charge of the 82nd, approaches York and is like, York, I hear you've captured the whole damn German army. To which York replies, just with sheer Forrest Gump levels of modesty, no sir, I only captured 132.
Only.
I know that.
From there, he gets some food, finds a cot, lays down, writes
He's
in his journal for a
literally-
little bit.
he's
'cause, you know,
literally
he's had a
Forrest
pretty eventful
Gump.
day. In his journal, he writes, and I quote, so you can see here in this case of mine where God helped me out. I'm a witness to the fact that God did help me out of that hard battle. For the bushes were shot up all around me, and I never got a scratch.
Never got a scratch.
Next morning, York reports back to Captain Danforth.
I can't
and
believe he
requests
didn't
to
get
take
a
out
single
small
scratch
detail
or a
to go
bruise
back
or
to the site of his
anything.
battle and look for any survivors, because that's just the type of guy that York is. Captain Danforth not only agrees to let him do it, but he's like, I'm going with you, and he brings some other high-ranking officers with him because they want to hear York explain what the fuck happened. By the time they get out there, there's no survivors. All the dead bodies has already been removed. There was never an official body count of how many Germans York killed, but pretty much everybody agrees it's somewhere between 20 and 30 that he had killed single-handedly. York then takes him to the patch of grass that was his firing position, and, you know, he was in the heat of battle. He wasn't really paying attention to what was going on. It was all part of God's plan. But looking at
Bro's
it
got
in
a
retrospect,
30.0
everything
KDA.
around the patch of grass that he was on is
God is
absolutely
my
shot to shit.
bestie,
Just
real.
hundreds of bullet holes all over it. None of them hit Alvin York. He dropped his canteen during that firefight. That canteen was still there, feet from his position, and that canteen had 18 bullet holes in it. Okay, literally the holy canteen.
The
It's all part of God's
canteen?
plan. York
The
finishes
canteen
explaining
took
everything
all
that
the bullet
happened there. They
holes.
head back to headquarters. This is like a
It
big
was a
deal,
holy
right? I mean,
canteen.
you're
It
gonna
saved
probably
it.
give this guy the Medal of Honor. They got to really know what happened, and this sounds so incredibly unbelievable. Like they need to make
Really,
sure
though.
this actually happened before they write this up, right? So they interview York twice. Same exact story every time. He's incredibly modest about the entire thing, tries to give as much credit to the other 7 privates as he can. They interview the 7 privates. All 7 privates are like, Alvin York's a fucking superhero. They interview some of the Germans. The Germans are like, It was fucking crazy. I don't know. We couldn't hit the guy with bullets. They interviewed Vollmer. The story is the same across everybody. It's one of the most well-researched battles ever. From here, a couple of weeks go by. By October 28th, 1918, his unit gets pulled back out of the Argonne. They go to the rear, and then he gets placed on 10 days leave on November 1st. And while he's on leave, he sends a postcard back home to his mother. You know, he's probably got a lot to tell her. That postcard reads,
Yeah, just a bit.
and I quote, "Hello, I'm okay. Sending you a postcard view of a little of this country along the coast. It's a nice scene." Well, that's all.
That's all he has to say after being a war hero.
Say about that.
Oh my god, it's literally him.
You said it all.
Now, like I said, he goes on 10 days leave on November 1st,
Beautiful.
1918. Guess what happens on November 11th, right as he's ending his leave? Germany surrenders. World War I is over. Coincidence? Almost unequivocally yes, but it's funny to joke that Alvin York was coming off vacation, so the Germans just decided to call it a day and end World War I.
We called him Baba Yaga.
From here, Alvin York was recommended for the Distinguished Service Cross. The only reason they weren't going to give him the Medal of Honor was because, well, the story was too unbelievable and nobody was willing to agree that that actually happened. So they conducted an even more thorough investigation. Turns out it was all 100% legit. They upgraded it to the Medal of Honor. He gets awarded the Medal of Honor. From here, they get sent out to some parade field. They're ordered to pick up all the cigarette butts out of this parade field because there's some fancy French general coming in to do some ceremony or something rather. So York and the rest of the guys are out in this parade field for like 2 days, picking up thousands and thousands of cigarette butts. Turns out the French guy that was coming was actually the French guy, Ferdinand Foch, the supreme Allied leader of World War I, and he was actually coming for Alvin York. They have a big ceremony, and Ferdinand Foch awards Alvin York the French Croix de Guerre, essentially the French version of the Medal of Honor. He pins it right next to York's Medal of Honor and says, and I quote, "What you did was the greatest thing ever accomplished by any soldier in any of the armies of Europe." From here, York gets yanked away. He goes on speaking tours all over France. He does that for a number of months. He's finally ready to go home, goes back to America. The Americans find out. They want to know more about York. He does speaking tours all over America. At this point, he's still in the United States Army. He finally gets released from service, but the American public wants more. They want to know everything. He's getting $1,000 offers to go give speaking engagements, which back at this point in time, $1,000 is
Probably a lot of
He's
money.
getting offered $10,000 for his life story in a book. He's getting offered $50,000 to do a film about his exploits. He rejects all of it. He doesn't want any of it. He doesn't want the fame. He doesn't want to be
He's just a
recognized or
humble
glorified
country
for having to take
bumpkin.
human life. He only feels like he did it because it was absolutely necessary, because he is the peacemaker. So that's it. He just flat out rejects everything, goes back into
He's
the
a
mountains of
godly
Tennessee. He
man.
just wants to go there, live his life, read his Bible, marry his sweetheart Gracie, and that's exactly what he does. Time goes by.
Aw,
and he still has
yay,
people
finally
offering
he
him money
married
left and right
her.
for speaking engagements, movies, books, anything and everything you can imagine. He's getting offered money to endorse products, absolutely everything. And eventually he kind of figures, you know, this is a rare opportunity. He could probably do a lot of good in the world if he raised all this money and did something productive with it. And he remembers, you know, he wasn't really able to go to school as a kid. He has about a 3rd grade education. He was only able to go to school on weekends. There just wasn't a school in that part of rural Tennessee.
This guy
where he
has a
was
heart
growing
of
up, and there
gold.
still isn't today, but if he could raise enough money, he could change that. He could affect the lives of all the kids
pure
around
bean.
him, and that's what he decides to do. So that's what he does. He leverages his fame to raise money to open up schools for kids in rural areas so they can get an education. He goes on speaking tours, raising money. He
Based.
sells the rights to his book. He sells
my
the rights
God.
to his war diary that he kept during
He's a
World
war
War I.
hero
He sells
and
the rights to a movie,
an
goes on,
education
he's a
hero.
technical advisor. He ends up raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, which at this point in time is millions.
That's like
He ends up
millions.
founding
That's
the York
crazy.
Institute in Jamestown, Tennessee, which is a privately funded school, but it's open to kids for free. And this wasn't just like overnight or over a year. This took years and years and years to do. And over the course of that time, he raised hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he paid himself almost nothing. Like, he didn't build a new fancy house. He didn't buy a bunch of nice stuff for himself or his family. He was still living exactly how he grew up the entire time. Out of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that he made, I believe he paid himself just over $6,000 over the course of like a decade. The man is truly selfless.
Wow.
He literally took just enough money to keep food on the table for his family and gave everything else to this school. But as we all know, no good deed goes unpunished. Alvin York, the man with a 3rd grade education, was under the impression that because he was doing selfless stuff with the money, he was literally donating it to give kids an education, he thought that that was a charitable donation and that he didn't have to pay taxes on it. Well, apparently he was wrong, because he wasn't a, 401c fucking charity or whatever the fuck with the IRS. So none of that counts, and Alvin York now owes a ton of money in back taxes, and the IRS is coming after him.
It's never too
Not
early
the
to learn that the
IRS.
government is a greedy piglet that suckles on a taxpayer's teat until they have sore, chapped nipples.
Okay, and just so we're on the same page, this is like now the early 1940s. 2 decades have gone by, and the tax rate at this point in time is absolutely insane. The top marginal income bracket for federal taxes is 81%. He made $134,000 with his hit movie that came out in 1941. The IRS said he owed them like $90,000 of that money. Alvin York didn't have it. He used all the money
That's
to
fucking
build this school and
disgusting.
start teaching kids for free. When the IRS told him that he owed all that money, he had a net worth of $21,000. $20,000 of that net worth was just the value of the farm that him and his family lived on. You know, the same farm that his family has lived on since they came across the ocean and lived there in a fucking cave. Other than that, he had a car that was worth $700. He had $2.20 in his checking account, and he got a $10 a month stipend for being a Medal of Honor recipient. That was it. He gave everything else away. Thankfully, the government steps in because York doesn't have the money to keep funding this school. So the government steps in and is like, oh, you built the whole school for us. You bought instruments for the band, books, chairs, desks, everything. Oh yeah, we'd be willing to, you know, take that over and make it a public school, which York doesn't give a shit. He literally just wants kids to get an education. So of course he signs it over to the government so they can keep maintaining the York Institute. And it is literally still in operation to this day. It is a public high school in Jamestown, Tennessee. In addition to that,
that's
thanks to a
nice.
literal act
But he's
of
still in
Congress,
debt.
They forgive his debt, and he is
Oh,
now
okay.
debt-free. Now, going back to his movie, it came
Yay!
out in 1941, right as America is getting ready to enter World War II.
It is a happy ending.
Nationwide sensation. He becomes the most popular man in the country all over again. Because of the popularity of this movie, and because of the fact that Alvin York served in the 82nd Infantry Division, the All-American Division, when World War II kicks off and they start reactivating old units, one of the first units to get reactivated is the 82nd Infantry, which becomes the 82nd Airborne, which is still active to this day, and it is one of the most prestigious military units in the United States Army. In addition to that, it inspires tens of thousands of American men to join the military because they want to be a hero too, just like Alvin York. And one of those Americans is
Gotta be a
Audie
man of
Murphy,
God.
who would go on to become the most decorated war
Gotta
hero
have a
of World
holy
War II.
canteen.
Alvin York would go on to pass away at the age of 76, but his legacy lives on both in the school that he helped found and the 82nd Airborne Division. And that time the Army tried to name a god-awful tank after him. Seriously, can we name something else awesome after this guy? Like the next sniper rifle, call it the York Peacemaker. That's a dope name. He deserves
That's
it. Let's
cool.
do that. This man accomplished
I
incredible
agree.
and unbelievable things
York
both
Peacemaker.
on and
Make it
off
so.
the battlefield, and then afterwards he went on to live a truly selfless life in the service to others. And that is why you should never forget the name Alvin York. Thank you for watching. Best way to support
Alvin
the channel is to buy some
York.
merch over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang out.
Quack bang out.
My
Quack.
favorite thing about the Sergeant
Quack, quack.
York movie was he was the technical advisor. Like, he signed off on absolutely everything in the movie. He tried to have the other men represented. He tried to keep it as accurate as possible. But there was one thing he didn't sign off on, and I don't even know if he knew they did it, because they made it seem like Alvin York kissed Gracie before he went off to war. Both Alvin,
Oh,
his
no, he would
wife,
never.
and all of their kids.
He's
after the fact,
pure.
whenever this gets brought up or whenever they're
He's
interviewed
pure.
about it, they are adamant and make sure they point out that never happened. Gracie
No.
York is not some hussy that would kiss before
Never.
their marriage.
No.
Their first kiss was
No
on their wedding
smoochies
day.
before
And I don't-
marriage.
I
No
don't know, I think
hand
it was
holding
just, like,
before
funny,
marriage.
cute. Anyways, see you guys later.
That's adorable. Oh my god. Bam bam ba down ba bam
I
bam ba
remember
down.
one day back in the Argonne when we took
Pure like the unicorn ew.
I noticed one German corporal looking us over, mightily puzzled. He could speak a little English. He asked if all of us in the outfit were Americans. We told him we were. He just shook his head. Didn't seem that he could take it at all. You see, the All-American Division was made up of boys from all over the country. There were boys from the mountains like me and boys from the small towns and cities. There were Southerners, New Yorkers, Middle Westerners, as well as boys from the cow country in the Pacific coast. And there were men whose folks had been Greek, Italian, Jewish, German, Polish, Swedish, and Irish. Just every strain of good American you could think of. It sure seemed to get this German corporal down. He just couldn't understand how we could all pull together and smash up soldiers of the great German race. They can't get it through their thick heads that it's not your creed or your high, nor the color of your eyes that makes an American. It's our freedom and equality over the Constitution and our Bill of Rights that makes an American an almighty fighter. Once a man has tasted that freedom, he'd rather die fighting than to do without it for himself and his children.
07. 07's in the chat. Now that there's an American hero. Hand-holding is a lewd. No eye contact before marriage. Good night, Dave. Sweet dreams. Bye-bye. Night-night, tuckies. Only Christian side hugs. What the hecky? You're still here. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so you don't miss my new videos. Or else I'll tax 69% of your past, present, and future chicky nuggies.